in our headlines on this Thursday afternoon, February 15th. South Korea is establishing formal ties with Cuba, an ally of North Korea, amid efforts by the Yoon administration to expand its diplomacy with the Latin American region. On the trade front, Korea's exports expands 25% on year in January to hit above $16.3 billion on the back of strong semiconductor shipments. Meanwhile, in the US, a mass shooting in Kansas City takes at least one life and injures more than 20 others, including children, on Wednesday amid festivities to mark the city's Super Bowl victory. We start with news of a promising diplomatic feat. Seoul and Havana have forged formal ties for the first time. Our foreign affairs correspondent Peunji covers this stride forward and its significance.
Cuba has become the 193rd country in the world to form diplomatic relations with South Korea. Seoul's foreign ministry said in a statement that the United Nations representatives for the two countries exchanged official letters in New York on Wednesday local time. It also said this marks an important turning point for South Korea in its effort to strengthen diplomacy in the Latin American region and expand diplomatic horizons. This leaves Syria as the only country among UN member states that does not have diplomatic ties with South Korea. The communist-run island was the only country in Latin America that did not have diplomatic relations with South Korea. This was mainly because it has been and continues to be a close ally of North Korea. North Korea established diplomatic ties with Cuba in 1960, and Cuba still has an embassy in Pyongyang. With South Korea and Cuba agreeing to open diplomatic relations, North Korea is expected to become more isolated on the global stage. South Korea also hopes to expand economic cooperation with Cuba. Seoul's foreign ministry said the new diplomatic ties are expected to help support Korean companies to do business in Cuba. As of 2022, the trade volume between the two countries amounted to approximately $40 million in exports and $7 million in imports. Also, Seoul aims to provide consular assistance to Koreans visiting Cuba. Around 14,000 Koreans visited Cuba annually before the pandemic, and there are about 1,000 people descended from Koreans who moved to Mexico in 1921 during Japan's colonial rule, currently living in Cuba. Peunji, Arirang News.
U.S. Special Envoy on North Korean human rights issues Julie Tanner is here in South Korea to advance efforts to address the plight of people in North Korea. Now, Tanner's visit to this part of the world, that includes an earlier stop in Japan, comes amid the 10th anniversary of a UN report on human rights abuses in North Korea. Now, these concerns are expected to have topped talks between Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol and Tanner earlier on this Thursday. The international community, for its part, has been raising much alarm over China's forced repatriation of North Koreans. And North Korea has confirmed its testing of what it claims was a new surface-to-sea missile Wednesday morning. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung has details.
North Korea test-fired a new surface-to-sea missile on Wednesday morning under the supervision of its leader Kim Jong-un. The regime state-run Korean Central News Agency reported Thursday that Pyongyang test-launched its new missile named Padasuri-6. The missile reportedly flew for 1,400 seconds, a little over 23 minutes, over waters in the East Sea to hit a target. Considering the flight time, the missile is estimated to have flown around 200 kilometers. Experts believe the Padasuri-6 is an upgrade of North Korea's version of Russia's Kh-35 Uran anti-ship missile. Following the North's report, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff expressed confidence in countering North Korea's threats.
Our military is thoroughly equipped to detect and intercept North Korea's missiles against South Korea.
Kim also ordered a stronger military defense posture in waters north of South Korea's Yeonpyeong and Baekneung-do Islands along the western maritime border. Kim's order comes as he accused South Korean warships of frequently invading its waters by defending the northern limit line, the de facto inter-Korean maritime border, which the regime does not recognize. The North Korean leader warned that Pyongyang would regard the South's violation as an infringement of its sovereignty and an act of military provocation, leading to the use of force. South Korea's military, however, reiterated that the NLL will remain unchanged.
The NLL is our military's unchanging maritime border, and our military will be fully prepared to respond resolutely to any provocation.
Seoul's military detected the latest launch at around 9 a.m. Wednesday. This is the regime's 5th cruise missile launch this year. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, intelligence authorities here in the country have shared disturbing details about collusion between South Korean cyber criminals and North Korean agents to promote illicit online gambling. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Jung-sil has more.
Some details of the North's mysterious Office 39 were brought out into the open on Wednesday. Gyeongung Information Technology Company Limited is the name of a company that makes illegal gambling sites and sells them to South Korean cybercriminals. South Korea's National Intelligence Service said Wednesday that the company operates in Dandong City, China, and is under the supervision of Office 39, one of the mysterious organizations under the Workers' Party of Korea. Office 39 is known to raise and manage the money in leader Kim Jong-un's personal slush fund. In addition, the NIS released information on key members of the office. Kim Kwang-myung, 45, the leader of the operation, is a member of North Korea's Reconnaissance General Bureau in charge of actions against South Korea. He leads 15 members. Chung Ryu-sung, 39, is in charge of developing cyber gambling sites and ad ranking manipulation programs. And 28-year-old Chun Kwon-wook develops illegal gambling sites. The NIS stated that these individuals would make and sell various software such as that for gambling sites for adults and teens and were each sending $500 per person monthly to Pyongyang. They had stolen Chinese IDs and, pretending to be Chinese developers, looked for jobs online. This is because UN Security Council resolutions ban North Koreans from getting jobs overseas, as the money they earn can be used to further develop the regime's nuclear capabilities. South Korean cybercriminals were working with the North Koreans because the price was cheaper and they could communicate with each other in Korean. The NIS said this was concrete proof that North Korea is deeply involved in South Korea's rising criminal cyber gambling. The country's National Gambling Control Commission announced last year that revenue from illegal gambling in the country had increased by 20 trillion Korean won, or about $15 billion in just 3 years. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
In other news, Korea has joined a planning body for post-war Ukraine within the framework of the Group of 7 countries. According to the top office, Seoul on Wednesday signed into the multi-agency donor coordination platform for Ukraine, which was launched in January last year. Together with the EU Commission, the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, the platform aims to coordinate financial support as well as mid to long-term reconstruction and recovery plans for Ukraine. Now, back last July, President Yoon Suk-yeol made a surprise visit to Ukraine and shared plans for humanitarian aid and reconstruction with some $2.3 billion for related projects. A full-scale ground offensive into Rafah will proceed as planned once its civilians are able to seek shelter elsewhere. Now, this is according to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, despite international calls against the operation. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed Wednesday that the Israeli forces would carry out a powerful operation in Rafah after the many Gazans who have sought refuge in the southern Gaza city are allowed to leave. In his official Telegram account, the Israeli leader said that his country will continue to fight until complete victory, adding that it will happen after the civilian population leaves the battle zones in Rafah. In a separate video message, Netanyahu said that the only way to get back the Israeli hostages would be through a combination of strong military pressure and firm negotiations, just as in the case of the 112 previously freed hostages. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister's office said Wednesday that no new proposals from Hamas for a ceasefire and hostage release deal were given. The office added that the Prime Minister insists that Israel will not yield to Hamas's outrageous demands and that a change in Hamas's positions will allow progress in negotiations. Reports say the Palestinian militant group is demanding an end to the war in exchange for the release of hostages, while Israel agrees only to a time-limited ceasefire. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his Egyptian counterpart Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met in Cairo on Wednesday. Among some of the issues brought up in their talks was the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, with the Turkish leader saying the Palestinians were at the top of the agenda and that it was their priority to establish a ceasefire as soon as possible. Both leaders slammed Israel's conduct in the war in the Gaza Strip and called for a ceasefire. Erdogan, who's on his first visit to Cairo in over 10 years, vowed to work with Egypt for the recovery and reconstruction of Gaza in the medium term. 이승재, Arirang News.
Over in Indonesia, current defense minister and former general Prabowo Subianto appears to have won the country's presidential election. Our Yunjin reports.
Indonesian Defense Minister and former General Prabowo Subianto has declared victory in Indonesia's presidential election after unofficial vote counts showed him with a significant lead ahead of his rivals. While the official tally results by the Election Commission are yet to be released, the 72-year-old former Special Forces commander has secured about 58% of the votes, according to 4 pollsters based on quick count ballots from a sample of voting stations across the country. Subianto taking an absolute majority of votes above the threshold of 50% nationwide and 20% in half of the country's provinces means a runoff vote would not be required. The quick counts are based on actual votes at a sample of polling stations across Indonesia. Subianto's rivals Ganjar Pranowo and Anies Baswedan have not yet conceded defeat and urged the public to await the official result, which is expected by March 20th at the latest.
The counting process is not finished. At the moment, the parliamentary and legislative vote counts are still ongoing. Please continue this. I would like to emphasize that I am a true Democrat. We will respect the results of the people's aspirations, because that is the desire of the people, and we have to respect the desire of the people.
Subianto was the front-runner going into the poll. One striking feature of this election was the country's youngest ever electorate. More than half of the voters are either millennials born after 1980 or Generation Zs born after 1996. Analysts say endorsement by President Widodo, popularly known as Jokowi, may have been a deciding factor. Under Widodo, Indonesia has seen a period of remarkable growth, averaging 5% annually, except in 2020 when the economy contracted due to the COVID-19 pandemic. His infrastructure building, health, education, and poverty welfare policies remain highly popular. With Widodo's 36-year-old son as his running mate, Subianto pledged to continue the policies of Jokowi. Critics have accused Widodo of trying to build a political dynasty. At polling stations in Jakarta, ballots are pulled out of boxes by hand, read aloud, and tallied by election workers. It is a labor-intensive task performed in a country of more than 200 million eligible voters spread across an archipelago of more than 17,000 islands. The laborious official count may not be finished for up to a month, but quick counts have provided an accurate picture of results in all 4 presidential elections held in Indonesia since direct voting began in 2004. The new president will be sworn in on October 20th. Ian-jin, Arirang News.
Korea's ICT exports last month noted a 2-digit expansion, that is, on year, for the first time in 20 months, largely driven by semiconductor shipments. Here's our economics correspondent, An Sung-jin.
A strong chip performance pulled up South Korea's tech exports once again. With a steady increase in outbound shipments of semiconductors, which began last November, the country's ICT exports saw a surplus of $4.5 billion for the month of January. Data from the Trade Ministry on Thursday showed that the value of exports stood at $16.35 billion, which is a 25% on-year increase. This is the first time that exports increased by double digits since May 2022. The figure has been attributed to an increase in semiconductor exports, which climbed by 53%. Memory chip exports, which jumped by 90% compared to the year before, and a rise in the average unit prices of DRAM chips pushed up the value of chip exports. Increased shipments of displays for high-value added products such as TVs and laptops also added to the growth in the value of ICT exports. Alongside outbound shipments of semiconductors and displays, Computers and telecommunication devices all climbed by more than 25% on-year as well. However, mobile industry exports saw a drop of nearly 10% year-on-year due to weaker demand as well as a high base effect from the year before. By country, South Korea's tech exports saw an increase in shipments to most countries, including China, Vietnam, the United States, and Japan, while shipments to the European Union were also up. This was once again led by a strong performance of semiconductor exports. China is South Korea's largest ICT export destination, with nearly 50% of outbound shipments heading there. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol has pledged to enhance the business environment for foreign firms here in Korea. Intentions to this end were shared during a luncheon on Wednesday with foreign business leaders based here in the country. An expansion of tax incentives and additional financial subsidies are among the options being explored. Acknowledging that foreign firms account for 21% of Korea's exports, he also shared hopes for continued common economic prosperity. The luncheon included James Kim of the American Chamber of Commerce here in Korea, as well as Eric John of Boeing, Korea. The number of self-employed people aged 60 and above surpassed 2 million for the first time here in Korea last year. According to Statistics Korea on this Thursday, last year also witnessed a tangible rise in the number of senior workers in the transportation industry, including private taxis and delivery services. They also accounted for the largest group of private business owners at over 36%. What's more, over 80% of them were sole proprietors. Local researchers have developed a wearable robot designed to assist those who have difficulty walking due to aging by improving balance and reducing energy use. Our Chung Won-ju explains.
This 65-year-old man found it challenging to engage in strenuous exercise due to weakened leg strength. However, he recently took on a mountain climbing challenge while wearing a robot that assists muscle strength and successfully completed a round-trip climbing course of 5 kilometers and an elevation of 604 meters in just 4 hours.
I used about 60 to 70% of my usual strength. It lifts your legs so you don't have to drag them against the rocks, and it's very comfortable and nice.
Weighing around 2 kilograms, this wearable robot helps muscle movement as if it relieves the stress from gravity. First, sensors measure the rotation angle and speed of the hip joint, posture, and pressure on the soles of the feet. Using artificial intelligence, the robot determines whether the current walking surface is a slope, stairs, or a stone path. The robot then automatically adjusts the intensity in real time according to the terrain, assisting muscle movement. It was found that the robot can reduce up to 30% of energy use when walking.
The robot can assist up to 30% of muscle strength required when a person is walking. If considered in terms of aging criteria, it can be seen as an effect of making yourself about 10 to 20 years younger.
Unlike previous wearable robots for rehabilitation or therapeutic purposes, this device helps older people effectively and safely engage in daily activities. By adjusting the intensity, it can be used for exercises that increase strength without straining, improving seniors' health and quality of life. The research team plans to maintain performance while having the weight to make the robot easier to wear in the future. Chung Won-ju, Arirang News.
And in sports news, Hwang Sun-woo has become the first South Korean swimmer to advance into the men's 100-meter freestyle final at the World Aquatics Championships in Qatar. Now, back on Wednesday, Hwang finished third in the semi-finals, clocking in at 47.93 seconds to join the top 8. Hwang won the 200-meter men's freestyle gold earlier this week and will be racing for another medal on Thursday, local time.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. In the United States, a shooting in Kansas City following the parade for the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl win has left at least 1 person dead and 22 injured. The shooting took place near Kansas City's landmark Union Station. According to the local fire department, 3 victims are reportedly in critical condition, 5 in serious condition, and 1 suffered non-life-threatening injuries. Information on other casualties are not yet confirmed. The Kansas City police have confirmed that 3 people have been detained following the shooting. Authorities estimate around 1 million fans and parade goers had been at Wednesday's Super Bowl celebration, along with some 600 law enforcement officials. In business news, one of the world's top chip makers, Nvidia, surpassed the Google parent company Alphabet in total market value on Wednesday. Nvidia's market value hit $1.83 trillion at its peak on Wednesday, compared to Alphabet's $1.82 trillion at the same time. The stock value boost comes days before the leading graphic card maker's fourth quarter results are due to be released on February 21st, which the Wall Street expects to hit $11.5 billion. Earlier this week, Nvidia overtook retail giant Amazon's market value, with a 50% surge so far just this year. It's now the 3rd largest American company and 4th largest in the world by market value, behind Microsoft, Apple, and Saudi Aramco. In New York City's Times Square, Valentine's Day was made extra special for a handful of couples who were given the opportunity to get married at Manhattan's iconic public square. Despite the cold weather, 3 couples read their wedding vows under Times Square's shining billboard lights in front of an ice sculpture designed by artist Lavi Piñata. Standing almost 3 meters tall and made from 68 blocks of ice, the sculpture, entitled Smitten, was the centerpiece for the Valentine's Day festivities. Times Square Alliance Vice President of Arts and Culture, Jean Cooney, said the sculpture is an ode to newly kindled love in the cold winter season. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Hope you have your umbrella with you. A winter mix is in store nationwide. 5 to 20 millimeters of showers are in the forecast for most places, but east of Gangwon-do province could see heavier rain or snowfall. Mountainous regions in Gangwon-do province could see up to 15 centimeters of snowfall, so please brace for heavy snow through this evening. About the temperatures, Seoul had April-like warmth with a high of 18.3 degrees on Wednesday, the second highest February temperature since 2004. But today's wet conditions will bring down temperatures rapidly and will wake up to a freezing low of -2 degrees tomorrow morning here in Seoul. Afternoon highs could go down to 10 degrees, lower this afternoon to 7 degrees in Seoul, but Busan is still warm at 16 degrees Celsius. It will get chillier as the day goes on today. Spring warmth returns just in time for the weekend, but beware of roller coaster temperatures. Dress accordingly and take good care of yourself. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Right, and that ends Thursday's afternoon newscast. We have our daily panel session coming up right after this break, so do stay with us. Thank you for now.